Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 66, featuring the top 5 to poll episodes. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Moorhouse, and I am the host of the TrekRanks podcast. And tonight we are returning to our character series, and we're heading back to Star Trek Enterprise.
Previously on Enterprise.
And we're doing our top 5 to poll episodes because to poll is amazing, and one of the greatest things about Star Trek Enterprise. She's a brilliant character. We love her. And we are going to get in-depth on T'Pol tonight, and joining us to talk about her are two great guests. First up, returning to the show is Dana Kenedy, coming to us live from the UK sector. Welcome back to the show, Dana.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk about T'Pol.
I realized after I had invited you that you are our Enterprise expert, because the last time you were on the show, you were here for our Enterprise Underrated in episode 46.
Yes, I love it. I love that I'm the Enterprise person. So if you have another one, I'll be for it, especially if it's Phlox.
You know we will at some point. You're 2 for 2 on Enterprise. And our second guest tonight is someone we've been interacting with on Twitter for quite some time, and we're thrilled to finally get her on. It's Melanie, who is at Shuttlepod2 on Twitter. Melanie, welcome to TrekRanks.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy and excited to be here. I am a huge fan of the TrekRanks podcast. Thank you.
Oh, I love it. And I know by your Twitter handle that you are probably an Enterprise fan as well.
Yes.
Shuttlepod2.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Melanie, for our first-time guest, we like to get just a quick Trek origin story.
Sure.
Yeah, what's your Trek backstory? How did you kind of get into Trek?
Okay, well, I'm another one of those old school long-term Trekkies. I started watching the original series in syndication as a young kid in the 1970s, Channel 56 Boston. But it was when I was in college in the early 80s that I really got heavily into the original series, with a particular affinity for Spock, Vulcan culture, mysticism, Sulu, and Scotty. Love Scotty.
Yeah.
My roommate in college in the dorm had a very, very small black and white TV. And one particular semester, I would buy the old TV Guide magazine from a convenience store, and I would actually post the Monday through Friday episodes on a whiteboard on my dorm room door. And friends would come for Trek viewing parties. That's where my love for the franchise began. Went to my first convention in Oakland in 1988, where DeForest Kelley was headlining, and that was back when there were like 100 to 200 people there. It was really cool, and my passion for the franchise just grew from there.
That's fantastic. Have you seen it all? Are you a completist? I can't remember.
I've seen it all with one exception, so I guess I can't call myself a total completist. I have not finished the animated series.
Oh, right.
Still working on that, but everything else, yeah.
That doesn't take too long.
I actually just watched it. Yeah, I actually just watched it for the first time a few months ago. It is so good.
I am planning to do a actual animated series rewatch, which people will be shocked to hear.
Wow!
Before Lower Decks.
I didn't think I would like it.
Anyway, so I'm glad that you mentioned the Vulcan culture and that you're a fan of it, because we're definitely going to be getting into that in this episode. I love it. And so let's jump into our TrekRanks recalibration to get the show started.
What are you recalibrating?
Everything. It's a sweeping, a recalibration of all systems.
First up, as regular listeners will know by now, general order number 1 here at the TrekRanks podcast is that we love Trek, and we love to rank Trek via some deep dive topics just to get the conversation started. And you know who we're going to hear from right now. That's right. It's T'Pol and Dr. Phlox.
But what is that Vulcan motto? Infinite diversity.
In infinite combinations.
And what is diversity? But a celebration of differences.
And as they say, the TrekRanks is just a big old celebration of differences. So there's no wrong answers here at TrekRanks. It's not about being right or definitive in any way. It's just about sharing the things that we love about Star Trek. We love it all, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise and the Kelvin timeline, and now Discovery and short treks as well. It's all fair game here on the TrekRanks podcast.
Hailing frequencies are open.
And you can find TrekRanks on the net access interface links at TrekRanks.com. And you can contact me directly on Twitter at TrekRanks or at Enterprise Extra. And you can also call and leave us a message with your own picks at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. And for everyone out there enjoying all of our shows here at the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network, you can support us via Patreon at patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. Okay, so to wrap it up, Dana and Melanie, why don't you guys let everybody know how they can get a hold of you? Dana.
I am on Twitter and Tumblr at Static Warp Bubble.
Static Warp Bubble, I love that. And there's like no E at the end or something?
Oh, right. Yes, there's no E at the end because there's a character limit on Twitter.
Of course.
On Tumblr, though, it's Static Warp Bubble with dashes in between the words.
And Melanie, I mentioned your Twitter handle before, but why don't you tell everybody again?
Sure. You can reach me on Twitter at ShuttlePod2. That's TWO. Just to let you know, I do have some physical limitations that make typing difficult. So if I don't respond to you right away, just know that I will eventually with some assistance, because I really enjoy talking to all of you about Star Trek.
And we love interacting with you on Twitter as well. Both you guys are great follows. All right, let's jump into our level 1 diagnostic and start getting into today's topic.
Diagnostic cycle will be complete in 20 seconds.
So for our character episodes, we like to use our diagnostic cycle to ask everyone to pick one word that they think best describes T'Pol, or whatever character we're doing. It's T'Pol this week. So that's what we're going to do right now. So Dana, let's start with you. What's your one word to describe T'Pol?
This was difficult for me, but I came up with blunt. And I mean that positively.
Yes.
She's very, very to the point and says what she means, and I appreciate it.
I know exactly what you're saying, and it's in a positive way. She's just matter of fact. She's straightforward. She is blunt. There's no question about that. Melanie, how about you? What's your word to describe T'Pol?
I cheated a little bit because I couldn't decide between two words. So I have
We love cheating on TrekRanks. We love it.
Good. I have a combination. It's complex/transformative. Even though T'Pol is a traditional Vulcan and adheres to many of the traditions and rituals and rules and regulations, in some ways, to me, she's not a typical Vulcan because she's one who's really, really interested in exploring her emotions. Her mother indicated that, and the show definitely indicates that she's pretty multifaceted and has many layers. So that's why I chose complex. Transformative because from the beginning of the show, from Broken Bow to the end, she's like a completely different person. She makes such a huge change with transforming and growth throughout her journey.
I can't wait to hear your picks because everything you kind of touched on are things that I was thinking about too. So for me, I thought about this for a while, and I just kept coming back to this word structured. And in my book, that is a huge compliment. I really like structure, which you might have noticed about this podcast because it's pretty structured. It's the same structure every episode, and that's never going to change because I like things that are structured. And I think T'Pol is very structured in how she makes decisions and how she interacts with people, how she lives her life. And I love that. And I don't think being structured means you also can't be spontaneous or have fun. So I think she's still both of those things as well. But it just means you're not kind of just winging it. You always a little bit have your structure to fall back on. So that's how I think about T'Pol. So we have complex, transformative, structured, and blunt. Blunt.
Definitely.
Beautiful. All right, so let's jump into our Prime Directives.
I do not concur with your captain's decision.
She's following our Prime Directive.
Define Prime Directive.
Okay, so for Dana, your Prime Directive, how did you narrow down your list on determining just 5 episodes for T'Pol?
Yeah, so I decided to go with episodes rather than moments, because if I went with moments, I think I'd be here for years and years.
Right.
So I shared it on Twitter. I wrote by hand kind of the episodes that jumped out at me that I remembered being T'Pol episodes.
Yep.
And I just kind of, while I was working in the past couple of weeks, I just put a lot on as background noise, and I kind of slowly narrowed it down throughout the week to, I think, about 7. And just this morning, I narrowed it down to 5. So,
the
last minute.
That research sounds awesome and is pretty commonplace, I think, for TrekRanks research. Melanie, how about you and your Prime Directive for breaking down your T'Pol episodes?
Yeah, this was tough. I agree with Dana. There are so many excellent and favorite T'Pol episodes that cutting it down to 5 was nearly impossible. It broke my heart to leave certain episodes off the list. So my disclaimer is that my top 5 and my secondary systems are pretty much interchangeable in some ways, depending on the day and my mood. So ultimately, I just went with episodes that I enjoy rewatching and that demonstrate some of T'Pol's transformation that I mentioned before.
Yep.
And also, I have a background in theater, so I really love noticing people's, acting choices and a lot of face acting. And that's what I think Jolene Blaylock does so well, because she's a stoic Vulcan, but doing great expression. So I like to look at things like that too, that are very meaningful to me and emotional.
I'm glad you brought that up, and we're probably almost 10 minutes in, and we haven't mentioned Jolene Blaylock as the brilliant actor who, of course, plays T'Pol. I usually have that in my intro when we do the character series. We'll talk about her a lot in the picks for sure, but I'm glad you mentioned that. And Dana, I'm glad you mentioned the difference between episodes and moments, because whenever we do the character shows, we do kind of throw that out there that it could be a little bit of both or either. It's kind of, sometimes it's easy to just pick episodes when it's a prominent character, but man, sometimes there's just one moment that you really want to highlight, even if it maybe not be an episode about that character. So either one is great to choose. And yeah, my Prime Directive is basically exactly like you guys. I went through all 4 seasons and came up with a long list, and then just figured out the 5 that I really enjoy and that I really thought highlighted her character and the acting of Jolene Blaylock that I wanted to talk about. So the most fun way to do it, and I will say that I think in 60 plus episodes of TrekRanks, this might be the most fun I've had researching a topic, which surprises me. But getting into these episodes and just really focusing just on T'Pol was super cool. She's amazing character, and Jolene Blaylock, amazing actress. So I love this topic. Let's get into our picks. Let's get Third Roboticon to introduce the order of things.
I am a Jem'Hadar. He is a Vorta. It is the order of things.
Thank you, Third Roboticon. And as always, just a quick reminder on how we're going to go through the order of things. First, each of us will reveal our 5-word summary and a hashtag to tease our pick, and then we'll name our top 5 T'Pol episode, and we'll discuss exactly why that episode made our list. And at the end, we'll ask everyone for a few secondary system selections for the picks that just missed our list. And as always, if we have any duplicates, make sure you listen for the Defiant Torpedo. And for a topic like this, I have to think we're probably going to have some duplicates tonight, but who knows? We'll see. So let's get rolling. Dana, let's kick this off with you. What's your number 5 pick for T'Pol episode?
All right. So number 5, my 5 words is I Love Lucy is on, hashtag Vintage Vulcan, and of course, Carbon Creek, which is one of my favorite Star Trek episodes ever. And I was going back and forth between choosing this one because technically it's not a T'Pol episode, but technically it is a T'Pol episode because she's the one telling the story. So I decided to go for it and put it in.
Oh, it's for sure a T'Pol episode, even though it's, what's her name? Tamir? Tamir, yeah. I mean, love this pick. It is quintessential T'Pol. It's everything you love about Jolene Blalock and her portrayal, because she's so stern, she's so hard, she's trying to be by the book, but then at the end, she's doing what it takes to get that kid to college and give him the money. And that always,
I know, it gets me.
Melanie, what's your take on Carbon Creek?
Oh, I love this episode. It's fantastic. I'm so glad that Dana chose it. It's on my secondary systems. I really like the relationship between T'Pol with Jack when they have that conversation about meditation and reaching a higher spiritual plane and how much she cares about him. That really stands out for me. And I love that, I can't remember if it's Mestral. It must be Mestral or the other guy who gets hooked on TV. I think that says a lot. It says a lot about us and TV and me personally. So I really enjoyed this episode. It's a beautiful episode.
And I love how at the end you're like, oh, is it real? Is it real? And then you're like, oh yeah, it is real, because she brings out the purse at the end. And it's just, I love that she has that attachment to her family history and just keeps it close.
It's I love that very ending with the purse, and I love that you said it's just beautiful. It's just a beautiful episode, and there's nothing wrong with being hooked on TV. I'll freely admit that is me. And also the great little meta wink to I Love Lucy and Lucille Ball, her place in Star Trek history and Desilu Productions. So just an awesome pick. I love it. All right, let's go to Melanie and your number 5 pick.
Okay, number 5. My 5 words are Michigan Zindies build bioweapon. # nice ray gun. It's season 3, episode 11, Carpenter Street.
Fantastic.
I love this episode. I'm a real sucker for time travel episodes. I would love to be able to visit other time periods. I enjoy this in lots of movies and shows, but especially Star Trek. I feel that Leland Orser, who plays Loomis, gives such an outstanding performance. And I think it's the episode where T'Pol finally believes in time travel. I love to see her adapting to the time period, the language, the lingo, the vehicles, the car driving, and how she starts catching on with the language quickly, like when she's interrogating Loomis and says, "Did you happen to figure?"
Right.
I like that she's observing humanity in this time period and having a perspective about it when she says, greed, violence, moral corruption. In one individual, we found all of the worst qualities of the era. And of course, I will always love the fast food drive-through scene. It never gets old. And my alternate hashtag for this pick was no combo.
Oh, it's so good.
I love it.
It's such a great episode. It's one of these ones that stands the test of time. It's now it's a bit of a comfort food episode. I will say, the first time it aired, I was like, it's kind of a big departure. I don't know. But the more you see it, I love this episode. I'm glad you gave a shout out to Leland Orser. He is one of the best actors in Star Trek. I adore him. And that I couldn't help but laugh, that soundbite when she's describing him and all of his traits and being the perfect example of a 21st century human. I love this pick. It was so close to being on my list. It was one of my toughest cuts, so I'm really glad you picked it. Dana, what's your take on Carpenter Street?
I love it. It was almost in my top 5 as well, so we're all thinking on the same page here. But yeah, time travel is just one of my biggest loves ever since I saw Back to the Future and The Voyage Home and Generations and First Contact. So, and
keep going.
Star Trek does time travel insanely well. And this, it's one of my favorite Enterprise episodes as well. And T'Pol being out of time and alien, and it's perfect.
So much fun. When she's leaning over him and they're like, "You can add bacon," she's like, "I won't have anything. Thank you."
Welcome to Burgerland. How may I serve you today?
I'll have the double super beef, no lettuce.
1 double super beef without lettuce, please.
You can make that a triple for only 40 cents extra.
Do it.
A double will be fine.
Would you like to make that a combo?
Yeah, fries and a medium root beer.
Will there be anything else today?
A hamburger, ketchup only.
You can make that a double for only 40 cents extra.
No, thank you.
Would you like to make that a combo?
No combo.
Will there be anything else today?
Does the Fiesta salad contain animal products?
No, but we can add 3 strips of bacon for only 75 cents more.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Sure.
Quiet.
Love it. It's fantastic. All right, let's go to my number 5 pick. I went very off book on this one. It is a deep cut. It's not one that I expected to be on my list, but I love this episode. My 5 words and a hashtag. Not just a zombie flick, hashtag T'Pol Unhinged. And it is season 3, episode 5, Impulse. Basically the zombie Star Trek episode. And the production design on this episode is amazing to begin with, but I love it. And one of the main reasons is Jolene Blaylock's unhinged performance and what we learn about her backstory here, I think is actually really good because she talks about how she served on this ship, but she's slowly kind of just losing herself as the Trillium D starts to affect her. Yeah, I love the fact that she served on the Saleya before going to Earth and knew most of that crew. And there's this great final scene with T'Pol and Archer as she's trying to get her health back, and she basically volunteers to be left behind because she doesn't want to jeopardize the Enterprise, and Archer's not having it at all. And then it finally ends up with this final scene where she basically tells Tucker to shut up during the movie because they're when they're unwinding, but then that's not a real scene. It's like a fake out. So there's all these little twists at the end because the final end of the episode is her waking up from that nice little moment with watching the movie with the crew and realizing, oh my goodness, I'm being affected by this Trillium D as they fade to black. And it's a great setup for the rest of the season. And I just think this is one of those, it's a T'Pol episode you kind of don't really think about because you think about zombies. Dana, what's your take on Impulse?
So you actually might see this later for me.
Oh, wow.
So,
I love it.
Yeah. So I can save my words for then.
Okay.
But I love it. It's a great episode.
I love it. It's going to be a double deep cut Defiant torpedo blast. Melanie, what's your take on it?
Fantastic episode, and I also will probably have to save my words as well.
Oh my goodness, I love that. I thought this was going to be a deep cut pick that nobody had, and we might go triple cut. Okay, let's talk some more about Impulse later. Let's go to round 4, and Dana, what's your number 4 pick?
So my 5 words are never ask a Vulcan's age, hashtag Vulcans don't have heroes. And the last time I was on TrekRanks, I actually picked this episode for, what's her name? Fionnuala Flanagan.
Fionnuala Flanagan, yeah.
Yes. So here, I love this T'Pol episode because you kind of see her at the beginning fretting and trying to make everything perfect. And like, she's really, really worried it has to be perfect for this, like, important Vulcan ambassador, and then she gets so disappointed when everything turns out differently, and she's this like friendly Vulcan who shakes hands and laughs, speaks English, and I love T'Pol's reaction here.
And this is my science officer, Subcommander T'Pol.
Tanar, Paksurat Irani.
Najaral. But please, I've been anticipating the opportunity to practice my English.
Yeah, it really, and this is another one of those ones that I've listed as my kind of grown to love episodes. And I don't think you said the episode title. It is Fallen Hero.
Oh gosh, I didn't.
No, but I think most people will recognize it from kind of its place in season 1 as being one of those episodes where people were like freaking out about the Vulcans and kind of how they were being portrayed. Mm-hmm. But Fiona. What did we decide her?
Fionnuala, I believe.
Fionnuala Flanagan is always amazing, and the episode's just super fun and tricky and a great one. Melanie, what's your take?
I think Dana and I are on the same wavelength.
Okay.
I love this episode. I agree with everything she said, and I'll probably have a little more to say as well.
I love that. We knew we were going to have some duplicates. So, all right, let's go to your number 4 pick then, Melanie.
All right. 5 words. Balance beam gold medal winner. Hashtag Vulcan zombies.
Oh, here we go. I was wondering where you're going with balance beam, but now, of course, it makes perfect sense.
Love it.
Impulse.
So we have the same pick in the same position. Season 3, episode 5, Impulse.
Yep.
It's just an excellent episode from start to finish. It never lets up. It's so intense. Not a minute wasted. David Livingston's direction is amazing.
So good.
So visceral. Her acting is incredible. Watching T'Pol struggle to keep her emotions in check as she becomes affected by the toxin. You can really feel the struggle as she tries to speak sentences, getting the words out. It's like a visceral and primal inner battle for her as she tries to speak calmly, like with her clenched jaw as her rage and paranoia builds. I really like how Archer tries to keep her focused as he works towards a solution, as he always does. And upon repeated viewings, I've seen this many times. This was the first time I noticed that the board, I call it a balance beam, that the board that they put across the hole is not flat. It's not firmly on the ground. It is slanted, making things way harder. I like to see the shuttle pods working together in teamwork in the finale, releasing the docking clamps. I like to see them working in tandem. And lastly, it's the episode that sets the stage for her Trellium addiction. I just love this episode.
Yeah, that ending is so great. So I'm going to have a couple more things to say about it, but I'll wait until it maybe comes up again.
Yep.
I'm so excited that you guys all had this. So, all right, let's go to my number 4 pick. And I've got my 5 words and a hashtag. By the way, this is a little more T'Pol unhinged, although in a very different way than Impulse. 5 words and a hashtag. This is the Vulcan soul, hashtag this is our way. And it is season 4, episode 3, Home from Enterprise. And this, of course, is the episode where T'Pol gets married to a stick in the mud in front of Trip and breaks a million hearts. It's a great episode. They go home to Vulcan, and the scenes in this episode between T'Pol and T'Les are really amazing. It's almost hard to watch because it feels so emotionally raw and real. The performances from Jolene Blaylock and Joanne Cassidy are just dynamic. I absolutely love them, and you really want to turn away because it's like, I shouldn't be watching this. It's too personal. And there's this moment where I love that T'Les challenges T'Pol for being too close to the humans, and she says She basically says what we always knew about T'Pol. Your emotions were always close to the surface, but now it's like even worse. And it's so true. It's just she's reeling in this episode from everything that she's gone through, and she's right on the edge the entire episode. So it's T'Pol unhinged a little bit, and she makes this call to Mary Koss in front of Trip because she's basically trying to help her mom, who she thinks she's been let go from her job because of her. Anyway, it's a great episode. It's really, really, I think it's one that's not underrated. I think people really like this one, and as a quiet kind of respite. So I'm interested to see what you guys think about it, or maybe you guys have it on your list because it is a popular one. Melanie, what's your take on Home?
Oh, what a great pick. It's on my secondary systems. I love this episode. It's so interesting, like you said, to explore the family relationships, the mother-daughter relationship. I love seeing any episode that happens on Vulcan where you get more backstory, more Vulcan culture. It's just so heartbreaking, the whole situation with Koss and Trip. It kills me every time.
I know.
And I really feel for him, too. It's just... great episode.
Yeah, seriously. It's heartbreaking. Dana, how about you?
I love it. It's one of my favorites as well. It's really, I love seeing T'Pol back on Vulcan after being with humans for about 4 years now. And it's just that contrast between humans and Vulcans, and you can see her kind of struggling to adapt back to her Vulcan ways. And it's great.
Yeah, it's powerful. And I one of the reasons I put these back to back was the juxtaposition of her unhingedness, because one is kind of the crazy zombie pick, and one is, it couldn't be any more of a quiet episode. So, okay, let's go to the soup round. Dana, what's your number 3 pick?
Number 3, 5 words. No, not the vampire movies. Hashtag wibbly wobbly timey wimey. And of course, Twilight.
I love this pick. Fantastic. Kind of a no. I mean, this is a popular one to say the least, but let's hear why you picked it.
So I mentioned earlier, I am in love with time travel, alternate futures, alternate realities, time loops, basically anything that deals with time being messed up in any way. And this one is perfect. So I love seeing that one path that T'Pol could have taken. And we know it's not the one that ended up happening, but I love her loyalty to Archer and just that devotion to just keep him safe, but also keep herself sane to have him around. I love it.
Yeah,
and we get to see her in a uniform, in a Starfleet uniform, which is
my gosh, she looks so good. She looks so good. I already was thinking, like, I'm totally gonna put a picture of T'Pol in a Starfleet uniform in the album art for this episode. There's no doubt. There's nothing but power and strength and care coming from T'Pol in this episode, and Jolene Blaylock's performance it's probably her best. It's really, really amazing. Melanie, what's your take on Twilight?
Oh, I'm with you guys on this one. It broke my heart to put this on Secondary Systems. It's such a beautiful love story, friendship love story, whatever you want to call it. The whole part about the destruction of Earth with less than 6,000 people, with SETI Alpha, all of that is so powerful. The ending with the warp reactor is so awesome. And, like Dana said, T'Pol being in the role of the caregiver in that alternate future is just so interesting in so many levels. I just love it.
Yeah. Spectacular. Great pick. All right, Melanie, what's your soup round pick?
Soup round. 5 words. I hope it's Spartan enough. Hashtag passion fruit tea. Season 1, episode 22, Fallen Hero.
Yes, that is great. That's a great 5 words and a hashtag. Love it.
I also really love Fionnuala Flanagan's performance. I just love this episode. I love the race against time, the inspired ending in sickbay, but most importantly, I love to watch T'Pol's reaction shots as Archer and Valar establish trust together, as they come closer together, because at first, Archer is like not having it. And then as the episode progresses, a trust does develop between the two of them. And same with Vulcans and humans. And they keep showing reaction shots of T'Pol watching that. And you see the warmth on her face that she's getting it. And I think it also says a lot about Archer and T'Pol's relationship. There's one point where she says to T'Pol, I've never asked anything of you before, but I'm asking you to trust me now. And Archer makes his decision based on his implicit faith and trust in T'Pol. And this is an early episode where that's being developed.
Yep.
So I just love all of that.
Yeah, this is one of the fulcrum episodes for the Archer T'Pol relationship, for exactly what you just said. I love that. Their relationship is amazing. It's an awesome pick, one that I thought might get some attention. Any final comments on Fallen Hero, Dana?
I love it. The Archer and T'Pol relationship, I think it's not romantic. At least I don't see it as romantic. And
agreed.
I really, really like that they didn't make it romantic, because it's so strong. I think you can see that they both trust each other no matter what, really, and they just will ask them to do something and just ask them to trust them, and they'll do it. I love it.
Yeah, there's a few little times I think in the our first 2.5 seasons where they kind of tease it. Obviously, Twilight's one of them.
Yeah.
But I think when they made the decision by season 4, it's like, hey, that's not what this is going to be about. And and then it kind of fills in the whole, now you look at it as, hey, it's, I mean, in all honesty, it's a bromance. They are just really good friends that respect each other. And in fact, one of the episodes I was researching, I didn't pick it. Oh, it was Ceasefire, where Saval is giving T'Pol a hard time. And she's like, hey, just because I respect Captain Archer doesn't mean I'm, gone gaga crazy for humans. So, but I respect him. He's obviously doing a good job, and you need to know that. So really cool. Okay, let's close out the soup round with my pick. This one is a deep cut. I love that Impulse turned out to not be a deep cut. Our panel is awesome. This one, though, I had it off, and then I had it back on, and I finally kept it on because it's definitely not a T'Pol episode. My 5 words and a hashtag, the Archer T'Pol Nebula, hashtag, I think the Robinson Nebula would be more appropriate. And it is season 2 of Enterprise First Flight. And I was, like I said, I was thinking about not picking this, even though it was one of the first ones to pop in my head, because it's really an Archer and Trip episode. But the scenes where T'Pol is supporting Archer on the shuttle pod as he's grieving the death of his friend A.G. Robinson are honestly some of her best moments in the series. So I ended up picking it for that. And I won't try and detail it all, here, but the whole episode is framed by this like nice soft conversation where they're off in the shuttle, and he's telling this story about his friend and the beginning of their program, and they're firing off these spatial charges to try and map this dark matter nebula. And it's just super lovely. I just love it. I think she's asking him questions about him, his friend, and letting him grieve with him kind of not really knowing it. And I mean, I love the moment at the very end where she's talking about, hey, you should name this nebula. And Archer's like, should we call it Archer T'Pol? And she's like, no, I think you should call it the Robinson Nebula. It's a really, really great moment. And there's also a very cool meta moment in this episode that's another kind of great shout out to how great T'Pol is, where A.G. Robinson's trying to encourage Archer to help go steal the ship. It's like, listen, when we're out there in space, we're not going to be able to always run and ask the Vulcans for help all the time. And then he kind of says, unless you bring one along with you. And I love that moment because it's just like, oh yeah, well, that's what he did. And it's awesome. So I love this episode, and it's kind of a sneaky T'Pol pick for her moment. So Melanie, what's your take on First Flight?
I am so glad that you picked this one, Jim. I love this episode. It's one of my favorites. I've rewatched it dozens of times. And that ending part where T'Pol suggests the name for the nebula seriously makes me have tears every single time. every time I've said it in the last 3 minutes, I get emotional when I say it. So it's just such an awesome episode, and I love the whole backstory with the 602 Club and just the whole, how Trip met Archer, and yes, I really like what you said about T'Pol supporting Archer and being gentle with him because this is so difficult for him. This is one of my all-time favorite Enterprise episodes. It's on my secondary systems. I'm really glad that you mentioned it.
That is cool. Dana, how about you on First Flight?
I actually didn't even think of this episode for T'Pol, so I'm actually really glad you mentioned it. But it's a great episode, and I love how we see Archer and T'Pol as not as captain and first officer. We see them as friends here, and I think those moments are the best moments.
Yeah, totally agree, and that's exactly what it is. I mean, they're just two friends. And one supporting the other. It's really great. Okay, let's go to round 2. Dana, what's your number 2 pick?
All right. So 5 words. Repressing memories is bad news. Hashtag T'Pol the Bounty Hunter. Of course, the 7th.
Ooh, okay. I'm excited about this.
I forgot about this episode until just a couple weeks ago. So it was kind of nice to rewatch that. But it's a surprising chapter of T'Pol's past,
Yeah.
which I think it was a really interesting choice, but it makes sense. And it shows that she's always struggled with emotions, not just after the Trellium D incident. She's always struggled with the emotions. And we really, really see, yes, that is the case, to the point where she had to repress her memories. I love it.
I love that you said how it's a surprising chapter in her story, because it really is. This comes out of nowhere, and it's kind of a really cool backstory for her that you don't see coming at all. And it's a fascinating piece of T'Pol's history on Trek. I looked at this one and thought about it. Was hoping someone would pick it so we could talk a little bit about it. Melanie, what's your take on the 7th?
Wow, this is an inspired, deep cut pick. I agree with you guys. I hadn't watched this one in a really, really long time, so I just rewatched it, and some of it was still kind of new to me. So it is interesting to see more about the T'Pol backstory and to learn about this ritual that I'd never heard about, the Fulara. Is that what it's called? Fulara ritual was fascinating. And more unhinged T'Pol in some way.
True.
This is great. Great. I love it.
Yeah, I'm happy somebody picked it, because I looked at it. It's not an episode I go back to a lot, but it definitely stands out as a standalone, straight up T'Pol story that really has nothing else to do with anything else going on in terms of the ship or anything.
Yeah, and there's more good Archer and T'Pol dynamic as well. She says, I need to be with someone who I can trust, and you really get them. I love it.
Yeah, and the episode's got some amazing production values in the sets and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I love it. Let's go to Melanie's number 2 pick. What do you got?
Okay, 5 words. 2 T'Pols disagree with you. # follow your heart. Season 3, episode 21, E squared.
Oh, that's a great pick.
I love alternate reality scenarios like Dana. And this is a favorite episode of mine. It's very entertaining. I love the descendants of Phlox. I love Lorian and Trip together, the brig scene, the 2 Enterprises, all of that stuff. But what really draws me to this episode is the scene with the, of course, older and younger T'Pol together, because I would really like to have the opportunity to meet my younger self and give advice, guidance, and wisdom based on my perspective. And you can tell in the scene that the younger T'Pol is a bit freaked out and shocked as she interacts with the older T'Pol, which anyone would be. It's very surreal. I also think it's interesting to see how the older T'Pol is different based on her alternate timeline. She demonstrates more humor, like when she says, "You mean that I'm still alive?" I love that part. The way that she interacts with her son, the way that she shares ideas with the younger T'Pol. Even Archer says to her, "Living among humans for so long has changed you." So I just find the 2 T'Pols fascinating, and I enjoy this episode.
Yeah, this was on my secondary systems, and I actually had it as my special shout out with just the line, because 2 T'Pols are definitely better than 1. And I was really close to picking this as well. It is an awesome, exciting, thrilling alternate reality timeline episode, and the strength of it is for sure T'Pol and the scenes where she plays against herself. It's incredible. Dana, what's your take on E squared?
I, of course, love it as well. So it's another alternate future T'Pol, which I'm all for. And you can't go wrong with this episode. It's just, it's great. And 2 T'Pols, of course. And I love how she's, obviously, because she's a Vulcan, so she lives longer. But I love how she's the only original crew member in the episode on the other ship. And it's just, it must be really hard for her to see her original crew members just kind of all die out and slowly be the last one. And there's just that second level of pain in there. It's great.
Yeah, it's cool. The narrative on this one. I love the script. I love the way they tell this story. It's really, really smart. Okay, let's go to my round 2 pick. It is 5 words and a #. Season 3 of Enterprise, caregiver to Paul somehow feels right. Hashtag, this is SETI Alpha 5. So it is Twilight, of course. And we talked about a little bit with Dana's pick. This episode has it all. I love Captain T'Pol, literally. I love this moment where she destroys the Xindi ship by literally taking the helm and kind of ramming one Xindi ship into the other and kind of shaking them off the Enterprise. And Trip's like, what were you thinking? Because they lose the nacelle. And it's but it's also got something that you never really I would never have expected in this character. And that's this caregiver to Paul, because if you'd said that one of T'Pol's strongest moments in all of Enterprise is going to be her being a caregiver to, Captain Archer in his compromised state, I never would have believed that, because I don't necessarily want to see her as just kind of just being a nursemaid and not living her own life. But I love this role. I love everything that Jolene Blalock kind of brought to it. It's amazing episode, amazing pacing. It's got the biggest scope you could possibly have in a Star Trek episode. It's number 4 on TrekRanks for Enterprise, and the best thing about it is T'Pol. So, any further comments? Anybody on Twilight?
Yeah, I forgot. I love the callback to SETI Alpha 5, which is just like a great little callback there.
Yeah, but it's also kind of a sad one, because it's like, oh, well, if that had happened, that would not have worked out for them. So.
they're screwed either way.
Right.
I'm just having a little guilt for leaving it off my list, but so glad that you both did, because it's a beautiful episode.
You should have the opposite of guilt, because somebody else picked it, which means there's another episode we get to talk about from you. So. All right, let's close it off here. Let's go to round 1 and figure out what our number 1 T'Pol episodes are. Dana, what do you got?
So my number 1 T'Pol episode, 5 words. There was lots of screaming. Hashtag T'Pol needs a hug. And of course, Impulse.
Yes. I can't believe this is your number 1. I had forgotten.
Yes.
That is so cool. So cool.
Love it. I love it. And I didn't think it would be my number 1 pick, but as I was watching all these episodes, I'm like, this is amazing. And you mentioned that it was just completely unhinged. And that's exactly why I love it. It's so tense, and you can see just how good of an actor Jolene Blalock is here. You can see that it's just right under the surface. She's going to burst and explode and just go crazy, and you can see like the little twitches on her face. It's just amazing.
Her performance is absolutely spectacular. I'm really, really impressed by you guys all having Impulse as picks. Melanie, any final comments on Impulse?
No, I just agree with everything. It's a phenomenal episode and an amazing performance. It's just spectacular.
And I'll just highlight again how great the ending is, because they get off the ship and you think it's over, and then they're having this soft moment where they go to the movie, which they had set up before, and I love that Trip's behind. Phlox and Trip are like talking during the movie, and she's like, she literally says something like,
I think use logic more quietly.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was like. Please use your logic more quietly. And you're thinking, oh, that's really sweet. And then this is actually a really dark moment in Star Trek, let alone Enterprise, because she wakes up again from like a fever dream and she's seeing the zombies, and it ends with her kind of wide-eyed and sweating and thinking, oh man, there's something wrong with me. And it is really portends to what's coming for her in the season. So this is an episode that should not just be dismissed as the zombie episode on Star Trek. It's amazing, and it's a triplicate. We didn't fire the torpedoes. We're going to do it now. A triplicate. So awesome stuff. Okay, Melanie, what's your number 1 episode for T'Pol?
Okay, there were 3 episodes jockeying for this position, so 2 of them are in secondary systems. This was a tough one. My 5 words are volatile natures come in handy. Hashtag amazing kickoff. Season 1, episode 1, Broken Bow.
Yay, that's great. That was on my secondary systems.
Oh, I'm glad you got it.
Just a fantastic episode. It's the best Trek pilot, in my opinion. I love that it introduces her character and it shows the journey that she goes on, even in the 2 hours from the beginning when she says, until you've proven you're ready. And then they move into the ready room scene where Archer and Trip are, frankly, a little bit rude to her. So it's, really awkward at the beginning with her being on the ship, and understandably all around. But over the course of the episode, when she has that turning point, when Archer is injured down on the planet and she decides to follow his wishes, you can tell that there's a turning point happening there. And to the end of the episode where he wants her to stay and she wants to stay, that's quite a progression. And I just love this episode for introducing her. So that's my pick.
No, it's spectacular. Dana, what's your take on Broken Bow?
I almost had this one as well. I agree. I think it's Star Trek's best pilot. And
agreed.
And I think T'Pol actually is the standout character in Broken Bow for me as well. It's a great introduction, not just to her, but also to Vulcans of the Enterprise era. And I know there was some kind of, rift of, are they really Vulcans and stuff like that. But I think it was a great introduction to how different they are on Enterprise, but how much they can grow. Because as you said, she does grow a lot from the beginning to the end of just that one episode. And it just shows what's to come for the next 4 seasons with her.
It's really such a great launch for her character. The initial scene is one of the best in all of Enterprise when Archer says, you know how much I'm restraining myself from knocking you on your ass.
We may need to defer to their judgment.
We've been deferring to their judgment for 100 years.
John.
How much longer?
Until you've proven you're ready.
Ready to what?
To look beyond your provincial attitudes and your volatile nature.
Volatile? You have no idea how much I'm restraining myself from knocking you on your ass.
And then the end when he's basically saying, I can't ask you to stay, but I want you to stay. And will you stay? It's really, really, really good. I'm so glad you picked it. It was on my secondary systems. I was considering it all the way through. And it is also my number one pilot in Star Trek for sure. Okay, let's go to my number one pick. 5 words and a hashtag. Mind meld reset establishes Enterprise's credentials. Hashtag powerful allegory. And it is Enterprise Season 2 Stigma. And I mean, as a starting point, I love this episode because of how Star Trek it is. It's just a straight up allegory for the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s, about how the conservative government in the United States at that time would not help the victims. It would not help even spread information about the disease to help stop the spread of the disease for the betterment of the society. It was a real shameful time in our country, and those are just facts, people. Those are just facts. But Enterprise handles this story so excellently. T'Pol has never been stronger or more kind of. She's just single-mindedly focused on right from wrong in this episode, and I absolutely love it. She really takes a stand. This is the one where she's got this the Pinar syndrome, a disease that came to her from a mind meld that was against her will. And I remember watching this episode, and I am a huge original TOS Trekkie from the days past. And when they're saying, holy crap, mind melds are like a taboo in this, and that's going to change in the next 100 years, I just love that story. I thought it was a real fascinating way for them to talk about Star Trek and Vulcan lore and make that part of Vulcan history. So she, and in this episode, because she had this disease thrust upon her against her will, she had the opportunity to defend herself, but she literally says, I will not defend myself by, denigrating the minority population that's being discriminated against. And she's really like that right from the beginning. And she's got these small-minded conservative Vulcans that are just saying, nope, we're just following the rules. And she snaps back with, there are no rules that tell you to oppress minorities. I love that line. I think this is a real pure Star Trek allegory episode. And I also love, we talk about Archer a lot in this episode because of their relationship. The way he fights for T'Pol, even though he's a little misguided in some of the angles he takes at the beginning of this, but by the end, the way he's fighting for her is really great. And he's desperate to keep her on the ship and not lose her. And I love this episode. I'm interested to hear your guys' take. Melanie, what's your take on Stigma?
Wow. I'm so glad you chose this. I was strongly considering it also. It's just such a powerful message for our times, like you said, and it becomes more and more relevant over time.
Yep.
And I really appreciate also T'Pol's integrity. She stands firm. She does not want to, as she said, perpetuate the double standard. Her integrity is very inspiring. I love it. It's a great pick.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it, but there's this real straightforward right from wrong that she takes at the very beginning of this episode and isn't going to waver. And it says a lot about her character. Dana, what's your take on Stigma?
Yeah, it's I think one of Star Trek's best episodes, not just Enterprises. I think the allegory is one that held up well, because I know some of the older episodes from the original series and Next Gen and Deep Space Nine even, at the time, they were really powerful, but then, 25 years pass and it's kind of a bit like, oh dear. But this one, I feel it held up pretty well watching it just last week. And T'Pol is spectacular in it. Her morals are just so strong. And I think this episode, I remember watching it, it's been like 17 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's one of those episodes that has actually stood out to me 17 years later, which is great.
Yeah, it stands the test of time. It's just great Star Trek, like you guys said, with the allegory. It's just an awesome episode.
A perfect summation of that episode. I love it. Okay, let's rattle off some secondary systems before we get to the regeneration cycle. So, Melanie, what just missed your list?
Okay, there is a moment I want to talk about really quickly in Borderland when Archer gives T'Pol that compass on her first day as being commander.
Oh.
And that's one of my favorite scenes in the entire run of the show, when he gives her the compass and says, "May you always find your way." She looks at it. She has that amazing face acting. You can see her emotion when she says, "Thank you, Captain." It's just beautiful. I love that scene.
Oh, it's amazing. Great call.
Moving on. Okay, we have Damage, which shows the extent of her Trellium addiction. Demons and Terra Prime, of course.
Yeah.
The Forge, because what's not to love about the Forge?
Yeah.
I could go on and on about that. Salots, Katras, Eyelids, the whole 9 yards. I had Inner Mirror Darkly.
Ooh.
Probably won't repeat the ones you guys already said, just to be concise. But Strange New World was a tough cut for me. I love Strange New World. And Ceasefire.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Another good one. Oh, I love that list. Ton of good ones there. Dana, how about you?
So I had Damage as well, and specifically the T'Pol and Phlox scenes. And that's actually something I love about Enterprise is the scenes between T'Pol and Phlox. And I'm actually kind of sad that none of my choices, maybe Impulse actually. Yeah, Impulse had that. But those scenes between the two of them are always my favorites. They're both these two aliens on a ship of humans, and they always relate to each other so well. And I wish we got a little bit more of that because they're always so great. And so I have the infinite diversity and infinite combinations conversation in the Andorian incident.
Yep.
Carpenter Street, Stigma, Breaking the Ice, Ceasefire, Shadows of Pajem, and what was it called? The Forge as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I pretty much have everyone I think you guys have listed. Terra Prime is one that I had was really tempted to pick just because of that final moments with her and Trip are some of the best in the series. I had basically your whole list, Melanie, with Carpenter Street and E Squared. I also had Carbon Creek, of course. I had Awakening because, of course I'm going to have Awakening. My toughest cut that you just mentioned, Dana, was the Andorian incident.
Yes.
I love what T'Pol represents in that episode because she's struggling with the kind of obvious Vulcan portrayal, which and it's played perfectly by Jolene Blalock in this, that, you can kind of see she's trying to be stoic, but you can see through her kind of anger and resentment and embarrassment by the way these Vulcans are behaving. Mm-hmm. And at the end, she's got to stand right next to Archer when he's like, yeah, there's the secret surveillance base right in front of you. This is embarrassing. You take the scans, you hand it to the Andorian, and she does it, and she knows that she kind of needs to. And then at the end, she's the one that gets on the communicator and says to Reed or Trip, hey, let the Andorians leave. I really love that. It's a real strong setup for her and the Vulcans throughout the series. So that was my toughest cut for sure. Man, so many good ones. I love this topic. I knew it was going to be a great conversation. Let's go into our regeneration cycle and recap our picks and break down some stats.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
All right, Dana, let's start with you. Let's recap your top 5 to poll episodes.
So round 5, I have Carbon Creek. Round 4, Fallen Hero. Round 3, Twilight. Round 2, The Seventh. And my number 1 to poll episode is Impulse, also known as the zombie episode.
I love it. So you had 2 from season 3, 2 from season 2, and 1 from season 1. Melanie, how about you? Break down your top 5.
Okay. Number 5, Carpenter Street. Number 4, Impulse. Number 3, Fallen Hero. Number 2, E Squared. And number 1, Broken Bow.
Broken Bow. Awesome. Number 1. You had 2 from season 1 and 3 from the underrated season 3. And my top 5, my number 5 pick was Impulse. And you guys are both cooler than me. You had Impulse higher. I am so impressed. I love this. My number 4 was Home. My number 3 pick was First Flight. My number 2 was Twilight. And my top to poll episode was Stigma. So the overall breakdown was that we had 2 duplicates and 1 triplicate, a rare triplicate. I will never stop talking about the fact that we all picked Impulse. And I mean, I would have bet money that Carbon Creek would be the triplicate. And this panel is so cool. It was Impulse. All right, the breakdown by season is there is one pick from season 4. And 3 from season 1 and 4 from season 2, and season 3 led the way with 7 selections. So that's cool. Season 3 is fantastic. Enterprise, awesome recap. But as we do every week, we've once again entered a temporal causality loop. So before we can depart, it's time to hear from you.
The Enterprise has been caught up in a temporal causality loop. And I suspect that something similar may have happened to you.
For this week's temporal causality loop, we are going all the way back to episode 61 and our top 5 hangout spots, which was a really fun topic. We got a bunch of amazing lists, so I'm going to highlight 4 lists that we have here. So a couple, and then I'm going to read off 2 full lists. So first from Samantha McKeough, who is at SammyQ25. 2 of her picks I loved. She had the Hubishian baths on Trill from Deep Space Nine. And her number 1 pick was Kira's friend's 200-year-old cottage along the Halana River in the Musilla province. And I will hang out anywhere on Bajor. So I love those 2 picks. And from Deborah Moltisanti, who's been on the show at Silverdoe25, I'm going to highlight 3 of her great picks because she had some good hashtags here. She had Discovery Mess Hall, hashtag Good Crew Get Together. She had the Promenade, hashtag People and Wormhole Watching, which I love. And she picked Quarks, which I really like her hashtag Games, Funds, Spiral Staircase. You really can't beat a spiral staircase. All right, I'm going to rattle off 2 full lists here. One from Cindy at CindyRed60, and she did Hollow Hangouts, with a quote from each of her Holo Hangout picks, and I love this. So she had hashtag number 5, hashtag stuffed full of crumpets, Moriarty's drawing room. Number 4, hashtag goddess of empathy, Barclay's garden. Number 3, hashtag self-indulgence, and that is Cafe des Artistes from the great We'll Always Have Paris on TNG. Her number 2 pick, hashtag great time to be alive. It was Wesley's Singing Rocks from the Dauphine. I don't think I'd want to hang out there, though. So, and then number 1, hashtag delete the wife. She is hanging out in Fairhaven. So I love the Holo Hangouts. And one more list, full 5 words and a hashtag from Dr. Jen House at Dr. Jen Throws, who's also been on the show. Her number 5 was 5 words and a hashtag 0G secret sweet spot. Hashtag extreme reading from Broken Bow. It's Mayweather's sweet spot. Number 4, perfect pitch for winning bunt. Hashtag bring the hot dogs. It's take me out to the Holo Suite.
Yes.
Take me out to the Holo Deck. No, to the Holo Suite. Yeah, I wrote Holo Deck. Take me out to the Holo Suite from Deep Space Nine. Her number 3, hanging out with Renaissance Man. Hashtag perfect workshop. Voyager Scorpion from Da Vinci's holodeck. And
yes.
I love that pick. That's a cool one. Her number 2 was a song with your gach. Hashtag more blood wine. And of course, it's the Klingon restaurant in Deep Space Nine from Playing God. And her number 1, I really want Bev's hat. Hashtag make sure the safeties are on. It's TNG's Big Goodbye and the Dixon Hill program. So we had a few holodeck picks there. There's a lot to rattle off, but I love the hangout spots. It's one of our favorite episodes, so I'm really glad we got some great feedback on that. Once again, that's more than enough to get us clear of this week's temporal causality loop. So as always, I want to thank everyone for all your great responses to TrekRanks. So keep your list coming to me at TrekRanks so we can post them on Twitter and retweet them. But we also want to hear from you. So put together your own list of top 5 to poll episodes or a list from any of our past shows. We'll take them all. And give us a call at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527. That's 609-512-LLAP. So hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of TrekRanks. And on the next episode of TrekRanks, we're going to do a really fun one. It's been on our list for a while. We're doing our top 5 sneaky good episodes. And I love this topic because, what is a sneaky good episode? We'll find that out from how different people look at that. So Dana and Melanie, if you had to choose off the top of your head one sneaky good episode, what would you pick, Dana?
Ooh, do you know what? I'm going to pick Impulse because off the top of my head, I wouldn't think that would be a great episode, but then we watch it. It's a fantastic episode.
It's a great pick because it's freaking sneaky good. It's like people want to dismiss it. It's just the zombie episode, but it's so much better than that.
So that's my pick.
I love it. Melanie, how about you for a sneaky good episode?
Okay, for me, it's A Taste of Armageddon.
Oh, I love it.
I love this episode, and I think it's somewhat underrated. So for me, it's sneaky good.
It is. That is sneaky good, and it's an all-time classic from season 1, I think, of TOS. So.
Yes.
All right. Fantastic job, guys. Before we wrap it up, just want to give a huge thanks to Dana Kenedy and Melanie. Great to have you guys both on the show. Any final subspace communications before we sign off from either of you? Dana?
I loved watching all these T'Pol episodes, and
me too.
Yeah, she's one of those characters that grew on me, and I just love her.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Melanie, hope you had fun.
Oh, I had a great time. I also left the Andorian incident off my list and breaking the ice. Sorry, I dropped my paper, but I love those both. It was an honor to be here. So much fun and great to talk Enterprise with you guys. And I love T'Pol.
Well, we all do. This is a great dissection of her great character, and I look forward to getting you guys both on again at some point when we have a good, fun topic. So, all right, just want to thank everyone again for engaging with us here on episode 66 of the TrekRanks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
I believe there's a human custom that says when you discover something of merit, you earn the right to name it.
What would you suggest? The T'Pol Archer Nebula?
I was thinking the Robinson Nebula would be more appropriate.
Just want to remind everyone again that the entire TrekRanks catalog is available for you to download and listen to at TrekRanks.com and on your podcast player of choice. Our episodes never get carbon dated, so check out the topics you've missed and maybe just want to listen to again over at TrekRanks.com. And a reminder to check out our friends 5-Year Mission at 5yearmission.net. They're writing a song for every episode of Star Trek, and you won't believe how great their music is. They also have a podcast at the Trek Geeks Network, so seek them out. You won't regret it.
Something tells me we haven't seen the last of the detective in the bow tie.
No, he died in a house fire.
Ah, did he? The autopsy was inconclusive. I wouldn't be surprised if the body belonged to the delivery man, with the strange limp. We never did see him leave the house.
What about the gardener? He was there too.
Too tall. Even the primitive forensics of the mid-20th century would have determined that.
Perhaps we should watch and find out.
Part of the fun of a mystery is trying to solve it before it ends, using logic. You of all people should appreciate that.
Then use logic more quietly.